Hey, Clemson family. A win is a win is a win, but the Tigers' double overtime victory over the Wake Forest Demon Deacons yesterday definitely left some concerns moving forward.
I'm Daniel Shirley. The concerns start with the defense and the secondary and what can be done to fix what we saw Saturday. I know there were injuries. We'll get into that. Hopefully, those guys will be back this weekend. But I don't think what we saw yesterday was all about the injuries.
That front four doesn't escape blame either. I'm Bill Zimmerman, and welcome to episode 27 of the Reign Supreme Alway podcast. Thanks for finding us on all the major podcast apps and at youtube.com/Clemson Kickoff, as well as at our homepage, clemsonkickoff.com. Well, let's get into that defense. We will have a few quotes coming up from head coach Dabo Swinney and defensive captain KJ Henry, but let's just preface it with the fact that we know that no team can expect perfection. But go ahead and take it away, Daniel, because our text thread during the game definitely had a lot of fire going between the two of us, didn't it?
It did. And look, I mean, again, there's injuries, right? And guys playing out of position. I think Nate Wiggins was still hurt when he played Saturday, but the scheme did not help cover up for those injuries. I didn't like what I saw with all the blitzing and leaving those cornerbacks on an island. I thought that was a mistake. And it took a while for the staff to kind of change that path and try something different. And it just, nothing they did worked. There was no pass rush from the front, or at least very little pass rush from the front. So then they would have to blitz. Well, when they blitzed and bringing the linebackers and trying to help the defensive front, it left those cornerbacks in a bad spot. And I didn't like what I saw from this group throughout the game yesterday. It was a really, really shaky game. And I think I sent this to you. This looked like Kevin Steele's defense. This looked like the defense that didn't have any answers and was just trying stuff as the game was going along. And that's certainly not what you want to see from a team that thinks it has championship aspirations.
I think a couple of things were made clear yesterday. There are things that I've been suspecting for a little while. There was a lot of enthusiasm in the offseason for how good this new group of defensive backs was going to be. I think that was based on some spring and summer practices and workouts against a pretty subpar group of receivers, wasn't it? And honestly, I'm willing to say the same thing about that defensive line. You know, the vaunted Avengers. They built their reputation this spring and this summer against an offensive line that at that point at least average at best.
Yeah, there was a lot of talk this summer and a lot of boasting. You know, some of that it can be fun. Some of it is just not serious, right? We're just having a good time. All that stuff is true. But Bill, I don't think the defense has been great this year at all. And not in any game. And I know that, you know, the points, they didn't give up a lot of points the first 3 weeks. But yesterday against Wake Forest, they came up against an offense that could take advantage of what they were doing wrong defensively. And that happened. And you saw this Wake Forest staff and that talent. I mean, they're as talented at quarterback and wide receiver as anybody in the ACC, and they showed that. And it just felt like the coaching staff didn't have an answer. Now, is that injuries? You know, if Clemson gets Makuba back and Sheridan Jones and get healthy, Malcolm Green didn't play either. If they can get those guys back and then we see a huge improvement, well, then, okay, it was just about the injuries. But, you know, they had most of those guys the first week, and they didn't look great against Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech moved the ball. Furman moved the ball. We've talked about the issues with the screenplays. And then Louisiana Tech moved the ball last week with big plays. And so there has to be better preparation. There has to be better coaching. And then the players have to play better on Saturday. If this team is going to get where it thinks it can, Saturday cannot be the bar, because that was pretty bad on defense on Saturday.
Well, here's KJ Henry talking a little bit about exactly that in an interview courtesy of TigerNet.com from right after the game.
Well, let us know what we have mentally, for sure. Now I know we got battle-tested guys who thick and thin, even the thinnest of thin. They're going to keep fighting. That's one good thing. And now we just got to put together a better plan and a better execution. And that's what we're going to do. That's what I learned today from this group is no matter what happens, we're going to do our best, you know, to go on to the next and succeed.
To hear the rest of that interview, you can go to TigerNet.com or their YouTube channel. But I think Henry really put out there the strongest admission of a poor game defensively from any of the players or the coaches yesterday.
And KJ's a leader. he has become a leader on this team. I think you can see that. And you saw him after the game yesterday talking to Nate Wiggins saying, hey, we didn't give up on you. You made the play. And look, I mean, good on Nate Wiggins. I mean, he makes the play at the end after, as Sean McDonough said, he was terrorized by the Wake Forest passing game throughout that game yesterday. But he did make the one play. And I mean, maybe that says something about Nate Wiggins and his fortitude that he was able to step up in that one spot and make the play, but it just can't come to that. I mean, you play a game and it feels like you have zero chance of making a stop. That's just a terrible way to get through a football game. And I mean, I know that Wake Forest didn't score every time they had the ball. That's obviously not what happened, but it sure felt like they could score whenever they wanted to. I mean, we haven't seen that from Clemson's defense in a long time. And this felt like a huge step back for the Clemson defense. The coaching staff, it felt like it was overmatched, maybe overwhelmed a little bit by what was going on with Wake. If you're a fan, you're hoping, okay, that's because of the injuries. Well, we'll find out as the team gets healthier. But, we kept hearing about this defensive front being the best defensive front in the country. It certainly didn't look like that yesterday.
The mentality at Clemson is next man up. I've been looking at the two deep on this defensive roster all offseason and early in the year, and I've been very pleased to see that, there's not much of a drop off from the number ones to the number twos. And in the case of the defensive tackles, even at the number threes, there's a lot of superior talent there, and it just didn't show yesterday against Wake Forest. You had some guys out with injuries. You had some guys maybe playing through some things, maybe, Tyler Davis, who, by the way, was pretty gosh darn effective out there, but they're having to rotate those guys. You look at the defensive front four a lot of times before the snap, it's not the four starters. It's a mix and match of other guys, and they've got to know how to play together. That next man up mentality, that's where I'm going with this. They all have to be able to play in a cohesive manner and execute the game plan properly and effectively. And I just don't think that this group is anywhere near what that 2016, 2018 defensive front looked like. They have got a long way to go. They're talented. They're awesome. I'd still take them over nearly every other one in the country, but that doesn't mean that they don't have anywhere to get better. One of the areas that perhaps they needed to get better was simply staying plugged in all game long. Head coach Dabo Swinney talked about that a little bit. Here's his quote, again, courtesy of TigerNet.
Well, I told our team, my exact words to them, we were up 14-0. I said, hey, listen, we got to handle the success. And I didn't think we did a good job of that. All of a sudden I felt like, and again, that's part of coaching and maturing, but I didn't think we handled the success very well. I thought all of a sudden just that edge kind of, got up. You get up 14-0, and all of a sudden the edge isn't quite what it was when you started the game. And I told them that in the locker room.
Again, that's from TigerNet.com. Go see the rest of the interview there. That's a two-parter, actually, with head coach Dabo Swinney. Yeah, they have to maintain that edge as a team, and I felt that really applied in particular to the defense.
You could feel it, Bill. I mean, just watching the game on TV, when Clemson got up 14-0, it was almost like there was kind of a relaxation on the sideline. Okay, we're up. We beat these guys last year. We dominated them. We're doing it again. Okay, let's just sit back and relax a little bit. You can't do that. You can't do that against a good team. And Wake Forest is a really good team. It's a veteran team. A lot of seniors on that roster, offensively and defensively. Very good offensive line. Obviously, we know about the quarterback. We know about the receivers. This is a good group, and it's a veteran group. And they showed that yesterday against Clemson. Look, Clemson won the game. I mean, you can't get too down on a team that won the game. And, we'll talk about how good the offense was later. But this defense worries me as I've seen this defense play through 4 games. This was supposed to be one of the best defenses in the country. And here we are 4 games in, and it doesn't look like that. And it looks like it's overmatched at times. It looks like it's being outcoached at times. If you're going to win a championship, I don't think you can win a championship playing defense like they did yesterday.
You mentioned the possibility of being outcoached. I will say there is no question that Wake Forest head coach Dave Clawson and his offensive coordinator Warren Ruggiero came in with a better game plan, at least to start this game, than they did any time in recent years. They didn't insist on running that Demon Deacon slow mesh until they had stretched the defense vertically. And then late in the game, they were able to get good yardage out of that. But early on, they made sure they mixed things up and maybe brought some things that I don't know if Clemson was unprepared or just mentally not expecting it, or just something showed up in the scheme that Wake Forest was able to exploit. But my spidey sense was telling me going into that game that they would do something different, and they certainly were more effective than they have been any time in a long time against the Clemson defense.
They were. And look, this is probably the most electric, dynamic, forward-thinking, I don't know, whatever word you want to use, offense that Clemson's going to play all year. I don't think that there's any doubt about that. Maybe Clemson gets that out of its system, and we'll see moving forward. Maybe it gets healthy. Again, we still haven't seen Xavier Thomas. That has to help when they get him back. For 4 games in, Bill, how much longer can you say, okay, well, when we get Xavier Thomas back, that's going to help? And it is just one player. So we'll see. I don't know that you can keep counting on the fact that he's going to play this week or whenever it's going to be. You just need to go with what you've got, and they have to perform better. So, again, you get the secondary guys back, and maybe this week, hopefully that will help. NC State's really good. NC State's better defensively than Wake Forest. I don't know that NC State is as good offensively as Wake Forest is. So it's certainly not as high-powered and doesn't take as many shots deep as Wake Forest does, because that's Wake Forest's game plan. We're going to throw it deep and see if you can stop it. And Clemson really didn't stop it on Saturday.
Do Daniel and I a favor, don't kill the messenger. Go ahead and subscribe to us at youtube.com/Clemson Kickoff. Give us a like button, regardless of the fact that we're a little rough on the Tigers this week. Well, let's move on to the offense. There's a really good quote from head coach Dabo Swinney that I think will take us there about how proud he was about the offense answering the need for them to stand out yesterday at Wake Forest.
Last year we came up short in a double overtime game, so to be able to come on the road and win, and not only that, for the offense to have to be the catalyst, to have to really carry the load. It's been a while. It reminds me, of our 16 team, where every game seemed like it was like 52-40. Every game seemed like it came down to an onside kick or something. And I think we grew up in a lot of areas tonight, for sure, especially offensively. You hate games like that, but sometimes you need a game like that to really solidify your confidence and your belief. And especially coming off a year like we had last year, where we couldn't hardly, score 21 points.
And that is courtesy of TigerNet.com. Go ahead and see the full Dabo Swinney 2-part interview at TigerNet.com or on their YouTube channel. I think the biggest thing in regard to the offense had to be DJ Uiagalelei and the pass protection. That combination allowed him to look the best we've seen since that famous game at South Bend where he filled in for Trevor Lawrence.
Bill, I'll take it a step further. I think he looked better in this game than he did against Notre Dame, because he wasn't getting a lot of help defensively. And I know that Notre Dame game was a shootout too, but this felt like they needed to score every time they had the ball to win the game. And DJ got it done. And they also weren't running the ball very efficiently, especially up the middle. I know that Will Shipley had the big run to start the game, but after that, there wasn't much room to run the ball in the middle. So it was pretty much on DJ you got to go get this done if we're going to win this game. And he got it done. And he made beautiful throw after beautiful throw, and he was making the right reads. He was making the right decisions. I mean, Dabo said it yesterday. This is the guy that we recruited, and this is the guy that everybody in the country wanted. The receivers, my goodness, what a day for them. I mean, we've talked about the last couple of episodes, just catch the ball. Well, they did more than that. Joe Ngata had a couple of great plays. Antonio Williams had a couple of great plays. Bo Collins stepped up. The tight ends, I mean, Brennan Stool and Davis both stepped up. Davis Allen both stepped up. So I think you've got to be really excited about that. The pass protection was outstanding. A couple of plays where DJ was rushed. I think he was sacked there in the fourth quarter, was the only sack in the game. I'm really impressed and excited about the pass protection. They've just got to get better in the run blocking if they're going to take this offense to another level.
One thing I did want to get in there also about Uiagalelei, and we alluded to this after the Georgia Tech game, how his ability to come back from that really bad first quarter of that game, which of course all the national media just decided, oh, Clemson's not a playoff team. I haven't seen them talking about that with Georgia struggling against Kent State, but that's beside the point. Uiagalelei again yesterday showed that ability to come back and gather his game. Here's Dabo Sweeney on that, courtesy of TigerNet.
I needed to see him. How's he going to be when he makes a terrible throw or makes a bad decision or turns it over? Last year it kind of led to more of bad. And how's he going to handle that this year? And he had that little start of the first half there in the Georgia Tech game. Was like, oh man. And then, man, he just pushed through it. And he got better. And he got better in the Furman game. Got better in the La Tech game. And, so it's just awesome. I mean, he's a big, strong dude. He's so confident running the ball now. He's an incredible – he looks like Taj out there, doesn't he?
And again, that's from tigernet.com. You can also see it on their YouTube channel. There was that spell mid-game, I think, where Uiagalelei did have the ball sailing on him, threw some passes over guys' heads that probably could have been completed. But you know what? That's no different from anything we've seen from every quarterback in recent Clemson history. Everybody has a spell like that, and the good ones, maybe even the great ones, bounce back from that mid-game and they sort of shoot their way out of a slump. They figure it out on the fly. You could even say Deshaun Watson against Alabama in Tampa when they beat the Crimson Tide. He sure didn't play great early in that game, and then, boy, was just a king in the fourth quarter. So good to see, once again, Uiagalelei able to gather himself from a bad spell and play very, very well. I do agree about the pass protection, just outstanding. And yeah, let's go ahead and talk about the trouble fostering that strong running game. What we have seen so far this year, I guess that was a mirage because of the poor competition in this year's early schedule. If you can't own the line of scrimmage against Wake Forest, how are you going to do it against NC State, which is much more stout up front on defense? They're going to have to come up with something they haven't shown all year.
They're going to have to do something differently running the ball in the middle if they're going to try to run it in the middle. Maybe get out on the edges a little bit more and just not focus on the middle as much. Maybe have DJ keep a little bit more on the play action and those kinds of things on the option plays. But something has got to change. Maybe they go with the two-back sets like we saw at the end of last year, and those were really efficient, and I like that set, to be honest. I liked it a lot, but they're going to have to do something different to get this running game going, because all we've heard in the preseason from the coaches was, oh, well, we're not concerned about the running game. We can run it. Well, they've got talented running backs for sure, but that's not the key to the running game. It's the blocking, and the blocking has to be better. NC State is really good up front. So do you try something new? Do you try something different? We'll see on Saturday, but they can't continue to just hand the ball off up the middle and get a yard here or a yard there and have it be effective against a better team. And NC State defensively is much better than Wake Forest. So they're going to have to do something different.
I understand that showing that inside run is important to making the outside run game more effective and to making other plays in the playbook effective against other teams. But you also need to get 2 or 3 yards when you're doing that. And that has been one of the faults for this offensive line throughout the playoff era, that when they need to just line up and go get 2 yards and move it forward, they couldn't do it. Of course, Georgia Tech had no problem with that on a couple of 4th down conversions against the Clemson defensive front. If a team that's that poor is able to do it, Clemson's got to be able to find a way to do it. There are some X's and O's there that are just over my head, I guess. So we'll see what they can do. We'll see what they work on. You and I have been talking about that a little bit, and we'll get into it in our next episode, hopefully with a great guest that we are trying to line up. So be sure to listen on our homepage at clemsonkickoff.com if you'd like. We also make sure we have kickoff times posted there, as the name would suggest, and a lot of other great resources as well. Well, let's get into game day. Kickoff is slated for 7:30 p.m. We found out late last night. That'll be a Saturday game, but there's a storm brewing in the Gulf of Mexico. Could be affecting the weather Saturday in Clemson. I have to kind of wonder if that storm stays on pace. Would they have to move it up to a noon kickoff? We'll keep you posted if that does happen, but it's going to be a top 10 matchup, and we're going to have the pageantry of college game day there with ESPN Who knows? Maybe they'll have some Aaron Judge highlights for us too, right?
Yeah, I saw enough Aaron Judge highlights for Saturday to last me for a while, so let's don't do that anymore. It's going to be fun. It's been since 2016 since game day's been at Clemson and been out on Bowman Field. The last time it was there because of COVID, it was in the stadium. So that's exciting. It always adds a little bit of juice to the campus. Game day is on your campus, and this is a big game, Bill. This is probably the biggest game of the week throughout the entire country. So it makes sense that game day is going to be in town. And Clemson has played well when game day's been in town. They're 6-1 when game day is in Clemson. So we'll see if that can continue Saturday against a really, really good NC State team.
This will be the first and maybe the only top 10 matchup of the season, the way things are looking down the rest of the schedule, unless Florida State has time to climb into the top 10. What are you looking for based on what you saw against NC State last year, what you know about NC State with all the new talent on offense? What's kind of the storyline in your mind already, even as we're still eating Krispy Kremes and dancing after the close win at Wake Forest?
Well, there's a couple of things. I think they have to get after Devin Leary. They have to. We saw that yesterday. When they don't, what can happen? Again, the impact with the injuries and how that will play out Saturday, but they've got to get after him and make him uncomfortable. And then I think DJ just has to continue to ascend. If DJ keeps playing the way he's playing, even with, some of the deficiencies that we've talked about in the running game, this Clemson team can be special. But, this is going to be a much different kind of a test against NC State with their defense than what we saw against Wake Forest.
I do think that this is the best defense possibly on the schedule, but certainly to date that Clemson will have to try to solve and try to perform well. So we will see what the offense is able to do. Can those receivers do something differently? Can that offensive line block differently for the running backs? What's going to happen there? And then Devin Leary, very talented. I'd put him on a par with Sam Hartman, but he's got to sort out what's around him. And they have to find out what they've got also, because they've not played a terrifically strong schedule yet either. Those will be the storylines I'll be trying to learn about before our next episode and leading up to kickoff on what might be a wet Saturday in Clemson. Well, I hope everyone has enjoyed this, and we are glad you found us, Clemson family. Go ahead and smash that subscribe button or that follow button. You can stay up to speed every time we react to the big news happening around Clemson sports. It's also the easiest way to help us keep this a free podcast for everybody. You can also comment there and tell us how far off the mark we are to be so critical of the defense and the offense after a win is a win is a win, right? Our homepage has great resources too. We've got kickoff times there as they're announced. If there's any change this week, or if the following kickoff against Boston College is announced, we'll certainly post that as soon as we know. ClemsonKickoff.com is where you can find all that. Plus, you can hear all our episodes there. You can go back to our off-season assessment of what the NC State game would be like as well. You can follow us on Twitter at Clemson Kickoff. We retweet news as it happens. We chime in with our opinions as things are going on there. We certainly had a few things going on during the game yesterday. We hope you'll give us a look during the week as well. Well, until that next episode previewing that NC State game in depth, I'm Bill Zimmerman.
I'm Daniel Shirley. Go Tigers.